I know there's a message to receive. Written in debris, its meaning's hard to see.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by a new sponsor, Dollar Shave Club. Go to dollarshaveclub.com/LOFB and get your first month for just $5. My name is Josh Lloyd, and you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at redrock_bball, on Facebook at facebook.com/redrockbasketball, and of course at basketballmonster.com, and follow our Twitter account over there at baskmonster. We're going to talk about the two games that we had on Wednesday. We're going to preview the two games that we had going down, or that we do have going down on Thursday. So
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Thank you, Mr. Bolton. We will talk about the perfect DFS lineups from Wednesday's games. First, on FanDuel, it was Johnny Wall at 46.2, just consistently giving you around that 5x value, pretty close to it. Dennis Schroeder bounced back as something we talked about at length yesterday, 49.7 for Schroeder. Bradley Beal, 46.5, and Dwayne Wade with the best game, or the worst game that I've seen for a while, 49.2 for Wadey. Torian Prince had 24.2, Bojan Bogdanovic 23.2, Paulie Millsap 34.2, and yes, that is not a typo, Jonas Jerebko was in the perfect DFS lineup for FanDuel, and he scored 6.5 points. That's because his salary was at like 1,600, but 6.5. Al Horford had 43.9, and that's a total of 323.6 for a cost of $59,700. Over on DraftKings, Wally had 50.5, Wadey had 54.25, Bojan had 24.5, Otto Porter had 31.75, Horford went for 45.75, Schroeder had 54.25, Torian had 25, and Braddles, Avery Variety, had 36 for a total of 322, and that cost $49,900 dues. As I did mention earlier on, we do have a new sponsor for today's podcast, and that is the Dollar Shave Club. What's Dollar Shave Club, you might ask? Why is Dollar Shave Club an awesome thing that you guys need to be checking out immediately? Well, Dollar Shave Club, it's the smart choice. Men, and I know the majority of you guys listen to this podcast are men, shaving's a pain in the ass. Have you seen what I look like? You know why this beard developed? Because I didn't want to be bothered shaving. And the other reason is it raises, especially to shave with me, and I'm a pretty hairy guy, as you can tell by this beard, but it comes through pretty quick. My razors go blunt quickly, so spending up this money on these blades at a constant rate, it was not a good investment. So eventually I just said, screw it, because I'm spending $20 for whatever it is, 4 cartridges, some ridiculous price, and it's pointless. And you think, I just keep wasting money. My razor goes blunt straight away, especially on hair as coarse as mine. It was not an efficient market. You could either buy the cheap disposable razors, forget that, one blade on a plastic handle, that's not going through my face, no way. Or you spend a fortune on other razors with 5 blades, 18 blades, 17 lubricating strips, and it doesn't actually help you get the job done, and you're paying through the nose for it. So Dollar Shave Club, they've come here to fix this issue by providing high-tech, high-quality razors at an affordable price. You can go ahead and get their executive razor, and they also provide great shaving cream, the Dr. Carver's shave. But now I clearly don't shave every day, but I do have to trim sometimes under the neck, just because I'm hairy. Some people will go, I have problems with the beard. It doesn't join up my mustache to my under my chin. It's all patchy. I've got the opposite problem. My beard grows up and it starts coming up to my eyes. So I've got to start shaving the tops of my cheek. I've got to start shaving my neck. Otherwise it'll end up joining my chest hair and joining up to my eyebrow. So I do have to keep this stuff a little bit trim. I'm just obviously not shaving the rest of it as this stuff starts to get out of control. You can make the smarter choice by joining Dollar Shave Club as well. It's going to be something that once you do it, you never look back. For a limited time, all new members get their first month of the executive razor with a tube of Dr. Carver's shave butter for only $5 with free shipping. That is a remarkably cheap price. You get the handle, you get the blades, and you get the shaving butter for $5. After that, the replacement razors come once a month, and they're only a few bucks. So in that first month, you get an awesome, really heavy-duty handle, which is fantastic. You get a full cassette of 4 cartridges and a tube of that shave butter, and it's $5. You can't turn that down. If you go buy razors from a shop and shaving cream, you're looking at, and plus the handle, you're looking at $25 probably at least, if not $30. And for the quality of this stuff, you'd be paying way more, especially that shaving cream. So after your first month, the replacement cartridges ship automatically to you, but you can cancel at any time. There are no hidden fees. There are no ongoing commitments. You cancel whenever you want. But this initial offer is fantastic. And I encourage every single person listening to this, even if you just do it for the first month, which once you sample it, you'll want to keep going. But you do it for the first month, $5, razor handle, razor cartridges, and shaving cream for $5. And then when these razors go blunt, you won't have to keep shaving with a blunt razor because you'll be getting cheap replacement razors coming to your place every month at a fraction of the cost of what you'd find it if you went down to the pharmacy or to the supermarket, or as you guys in the States would call it, to the drugstore. Join the club today at dollarshaveclub.com/LOFB. It's important that you do the /LOFB because that entitles you to this special deal. So dollarshaveclub.com/LOFB. These guys are a new sponsor, so go ahead and support them. And this is a fantastic offer. $5 for a razor, 4 cartridges, and shaving cream. Literally, you cannot do any better than that anywhere else. So go and check out the guys at Dollar Shave Club. Let's talk about the action that did go down on Wednesday. We had 2 Game 5s in the Eastern Conference. The first one of those was Atlanta and Washington. The Wizards get the victory to take themselves up 3-2. Dennis Schroeder, we talked about him yesterday, talked about him today already. This is what Budenholzer does. If there are games when he was struggling or he had that foul trouble yesterday, it just goes back to normal in the next game, unless your name's Thabo Sefolosha. Schroeder played 38 minutes and had 29 points, 5 triples, 11 assists, and 2 steals, and he outplayed John Wall for big patches of this game. His price is pretty high on FanDuel, not quite as high on DraftKings, but he has been, aside from Game 4, a pretty consistent threat all playoffs, and a lot of people bash Schroeder. But he's been putting up some decent performances. Paulie Millsap was solid as well, 21 and 11. No defensive numbers there. While Taurean Prince, another start, another 32 minutes, another double-digit scoring night, 10, 6, and 4 with a block. To me, there is almost no doubt that he is the starter for this team next year. He is a 30-plus minute player, and he will be a guy that's pushing the top 100 pretty comfortably, I think, next season in fantasy leagues. Really coming of age in the playoffs, can do it defensively, can hit threes, can score, can rebound. I think he's going to be a good asset. Dwight Howard, seriously, there was a play today where Kelly Oubre had the ball at the 3-point line, faked the shot, and then said, there's literally no one in front of me. I can go in and dunk. Howard stood under the rim, didn't move. Didn't come out and contest, didn't stop the dunk. So Oubre had it at the 3-point line and was able to go, oh, hang on, there's no one here. Let me just take 2 dribbles. And this is not transition. This is not fast break. This is nothing. This is half-court stuff. He's standing out there and is able to take a dribble from outside the 3-point line and come in and dunk it. And Howard just stands under the rim, all the while pushing back on Gortat. And then, oh, look, I've been held. No, mate. How about you were in front? How about you just push forward instead of pushing back when someone's coming to dunk in? It was horrendous. He's been horrendous for the majority of this series, apart from one game. 5 and 10 with a steal and a block. And man, the decline in Dwight Howard's been pretty significant. Mike Dunleavy's still getting minutes over Thabo Sefolosha. I don't know. I cannot explain it. I cannot explain that one little bit. 5 points to Dunleavy, while Jose Calderon, unsurprisingly, wasn't able to do what he did in Game 4. He had 2 points in 10 minutes. Thabo played 8 seconds, so there's always that. Also, Ersan Ilyasova, just the 9 minutes. So Budenholzer just going completely away from everything he did in the regular season. It's like he just had 82 games to just do stuff that he never did. Never going to do in the playoffs, which is weird. Bazemore went back to being Bazemore, 6-2-2 on 12 shots, while Timmy Hardaway got some shots to fall, but missed just as many. He was 6 of 18 for 15 points, including 3 threes. For the Wiz, Braddles Beal, 27 and 5, but the defensive numbers, don't count on this from bad. He's just not going to do this that often. 3 steals and 3 blocks in 41 minutes. A good performance there. While Johnny Wall had 26 and 14. Otto Porter, it still confuses the absolute shit out of me, the lack of shots that Porter gets. 4 shots. Now, Yes, he got to the line 10 times, so they don't count as field goal attempts. But 4 shots for one of the best three-point shooters in the entire league. He ended up with 17 and 5, 2 steals and a block with 2 triples. Again, on 4 shots. True shooting of 101.2%. And if you didn't know, that's pretty good. They just don't use him enough. And its usage of 12% is ridiculously low. Bojan had 14 and 6 in 24 minutes. That's probably his good game, so don't expect too much more of that. And Marcin Gortat, man, he was lost offensively again. He took his first free throws of the entire series in this game. Ended up with 5 and 10 with 3 blocks in 39 minutes. The minutes were well up for a number of reasons. No Jan Mihinmi. Jason Smith got hurt and didn't return, and Markieff Morris was in a lot of foul trouble. So we saw big minutes from Gortat. And if we're going to have no Mihinmi and no Smith in Game 6, you're going to be getting 40 of Gortat in that game as well. As for Morris, 20 minutes, 8 points, 5 rebounds. Dumb fouls. That's what kept him out of it, and that's basically been, since Game 1, fouls have just limited everything that Markieff Morris has done throughout the entirety of this series. Brandon Jennings had a okay night, dished 3 assists in his 16 minutes, while Oubre played 13 minutes. And he's another guy that will get minutes if Smith and Mihinmi are out of Game 5. You'll see more Oubre playing at the 4 while Markieff goes and plays some backup 5 behind Gortat. The second game, the Chicago Bulls and the Boston Celtics. The Celtics get the victory in what was, and of course, because it involved the Chicago Bulls, it was a weird game. The Bulls kept it close. They were in front in the third quarter until about the last 4 minutes when they just completely forgot any sort of resemblance of common sense and ended up losing 108-97. Robin Lopez got some minutes back after he'd only played 23, I think, in the last 2 games. 29 minutes here, 14 and 6, 4 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. He does need to play more than that, but that was a nice rebound. Well, Dwayne Wade, you can look at that box score and go, man, 26 points from Dwayne Wade. He hit 2 threes. He had 11 boards. He had 8 assists. Playoff Wade. It was the worst game that I've seen anyone play, especially that first half, in a very long time. And those numbers are great, but it was very, very weird to watch him. His defense was atrocious consistently. He was non-existent. He just walked around. There were people with the ball. He just walked around looking at them, and then he would walk one direction, the ball would go over his head, and he'd keep walking the opposite direction, and then see Avery Bradley get an uncontested tip in. Then the ball would fall to him, and he'd smack it away like he was pissed off, going, "Oh, guys, someone get on him," when he's literally just wandering around. It might as well be wandering around with 2 fingers up his arsehole. He was just non-existent defensively, and still puts up a good line, which is great for us from a fantasy point of view, but shit, he was absolutely terrible. And then he started hitting these weird clutch threes. He got to the line 10 times. It was just, maybe it wasn't a good game. It was just a weird game from him. It was, you look at it and go, Dwayne Wade killed it. Well, no, yeah, he killed it. He killed both teams. He killed the Bulls with his horrendous defense, and he killed the Celtics with some weird shooting. It was just a bizarre performance in general. Jim Butler, not good from Jim. 14, 8, and 6 in his 39 minutes. He hasn't really grabbed any of these games by the balls and really said, "I'm here." And you feel it's coming, but I've been saying that for 5 games, and it just really hasn't happened for him. While Fred Hoiberg thing happens again. Cannon goes from not playing at all to playing 30 minutes, and to then starting his first entire game for the Bulls. First game ever for the Bulls in the playoffs, and played 36 minutes. Talk about the comparison with Budenholzer. Yeah, Calderon had a good game. Doesn't mean he starts the next one in this, but for Hoiberg, that's exactly what it means for Cannon. Now, Cannon was okay, actually. I didn't mind him in this game, but it's just weird thought processes from Hoiberg all the time. 13 points, 2 rebounds with a 3 in 36 minutes. Now, Rondo did not play, and he looks doubtful for Game 6, so I'd be stunned if we don't get another 35-plus minutes of Isaiah Cannon over in Game 6. Another rotational weirdness, Anthony Morrow was resurrected. 17 minutes of Morrow as the Bulls went to no point guard lineups. They played Michael Carter-Williams 4 minutes. They got Jerry and Grant out of the rotation. They left Campaign inactive, and they didn't play Denzel Valentine until the very end of the game. So we had Jim Butler and we had Dwayne Wade running at point. Shit, we had Paul Zipser running the point in this one. And we had 17 minutes of Anthony Morrow. Why not? He didn't use him ever through the season. And Anthony Morrow is a good 3-point shooter, a horrendous defender. Why you wouldn't use Valentine over him still baffles me, because Valentine can create and can pass. Morrow can do nothing apart from shoot, absolutely nothing. And he's as bad a defender as what Valentine is. But just another confusing, hey, let's just throw shit against the wall and see what happens in a game where, honestly, you're pretty close. Like, you weren't getting smashed. It wasn't, oh, what's going to happen here? Like, you were keeping it real. And can't believe I just said keeping it real. Nikola Mirotic, 6-4-2 in his 35 minutes. I like that they actually kept his minutes there, and Bob Porter struggled in his playing time, but wasn't a great night for Mirotic. But he did provide spacing, and it did enable guys like Wade to work better at the rim and in the mid-range. For the Celtics, after Al Horford's first two pretty piss-poor performances, he's been great. 21, 7, and 9 in 34 minutes. Well, Isaiah Thomas started off terribly. I think he had 2 points in about the first quarter and a half. Ended with 24, 5, and 4, with Isaiah Cannon getting the better of him early on, but Thomas came to the fore later. It was a great game from Avery Bradley too, who had 24 and 6. Kelly Olynyk. This guy's good. If you've been listening to this podcast since the inception, which if you have, congratulations, you're one of the 10 people who started listening to it. You know that I'm a big Kelly Olynyk fan, and it continually baffles me why he won't be used more often. Amir Johnson, who they started for the entirety of the season, when it should have been Olynyk in my opinion. Johnson, the entirety of the season, hasn't played at all the last 2 games. Olynyk should be playing 27 a night. Like, he came out of this like a plus 20 in 20 minutes. He had 14 and 5 with a steal and a 3. It just continually confuses me. Marcus Smart, very smarty line, 8 points on 9 shots, 8 assists, 2 triples, a steal and a block. So continues to do that sort of thing that we're used to him. And Jay Crowder was horrendous. 2 of 11 for 8 points. And you can count me in the group of people that doesn't think Jay Crowder's that good. I've said it plenty of times. And say the Celtics happen to get the 3rd pick in the draft. Maybe they get the 2nd pick. You know, Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum come to Boston. Crowder's not good enough to stick around in that sort of situation if that's how it works out. I don't believe anyway. I think he's got a very limited shelf life as a fantasy asset and as a starting NBA player. That's just my opinion on him. I'm much lower on him than most other people. Turns out Gerald Green's not the answer. Shocking. Played 6 minutes in each half, 12 minutes in total for those of you who can't add up. He had 2 points, and that Game 4 performance seemed somewhat fluky. Just start Olynyk. I don't need 12 minutes of Gerald Green. But the Celtics got the victory. That's 3 in a row for them, and you do get the feeling they're going to wrap this up now in Game 6, which is coming up in a couple of days' time. Let's move in now to switch gears and start talking about the action we're going to have happen on Thursday with 2 more games. The first one of those is the Toronto Raptors. They're traveling to Milwaukee, trying to close out the series. They're up 3 games to 2. The only injury concern we have across the whole slate is Chris Middleton, who's listed as probable with an illness. You would have to assume that he plays in potentially the last game of the season. He has struggled quite a bit, to be honest, this season since coming back from the hamstring. Some of that's to do with lack of leg power, lack of leg strength, lack of leg fitness, I would assume. And I think we'll see a better Chrissy next season, but he hasn't been the same guy since he returned this year as he was last season. Far from it. The Bucks are actually favoured here by 1.5, and the total is 195, which is the highest over/under of the day. I picked the Bucks in 7. So I hope they win, and then I hope they win Game 7. So my prediction comes up all right. My other predictions aren't right as well. What else did I have? I had the Cavs in 5. Cool, that was wrong. I had the Rockets in 6. I got the winner right, but that was wrong. I had, who else did I have? I had the Warriors in 4, I believe, so I got that one. Jazz in 6, maybe that comes true. Wizards in 5, that won't come true. Boston in 5, that won't come true. And Spurs in 4, that won't come true. So I'm going to get a few winners there, but not going to get the games right. Let's talk about these games here. And if you're playing cash games, actually, no, let's ignore that. I'll save that little gem for the next minute. Let's start with point guards. Malcolm Brogdon, 5,400, really got it going in the last game. He's back at home. He had 26 in the last game. No problem with him at 5,400. I think it's a pretty decent investment considering starting point guards who are going to play 35 minutes. They're pretty few and far between when you're looking at the $5,000 price range. And he's at 54 on FanDuel. He's at 5,000 on DraftKings. Why wouldn't you consider Brogdon a pretty solid option? His backup, Matthew Dellavedova, provides nothing, so he's not of interest to me. Kyle Lowry is at 8,600. Yeah, that's expensive for Kyle. He hasn't in the 5 games of this series got to 40 points once. And at 8,600, I at least want him to get to 40. The Bucks have been a team that has really restricted point guards through the majority of this season, and nothing has really changed in the playoffs. Now, in DraftKings at 7,800, his appeal definitely increases. But on FanDuel, I'm just not interested in Kyle Lowry at that sort of a price tag. Now, whether they go back to Corey Joseph or Delon Wright, I don't think either of them have any cash appeal. But 2,700 for Corey, 1,900 for Delon, maybe you look at Delon Wright as a tournament guy. I'd much prefer to go the lower price one and hope he goes for 15, because I think they've both got a chance to maybe have 15 to 20 points. But if you're getting it at $800 less, that's a better tournament option. But it's still very far from being a certainty or even like an above 50% chance of happening. At shooting guard, this is what I was going to say earlier. You have to use Norm Powell. You just have to. He's at $2,600. He had 40 points in the last game. If you were playing in a cash game, if you were playing in a head-to-head game, you can't not have Norm Powell. Everybody will have Norm Powell. If his ownership on FanDuel is not 90+%, I will be floored. You will have floored me. Totally floored me. If he is not sitting at over 90%. Someone can let me know about that tomorrow. 2,600 for Norm for a starter that's played over 30 minutes the last two games and has played bloody well. Even if he shits the bed at 2,600, I feel pretty good about him getting 5x value. You can't not use him, I don't think. Yanni, 10,200. Had a nice game in Game 5. He's going to be pumped for a big one here. You would feel at home closeout game for the Raps. You've got to save it. 10,800. If you're putting a guy like Norm Powell in, Yanni's a great guy to complement him with, because you're getting essentially two guys for $14,000 and two guys who could drop, or one guy who could drop 40, another guy who could drop 70. Yeah, I'll take that. And I think they're both really, really strong plays. As for DeMar DeRozan, 8,800. He's had one good game in the series where he's really smashed through that value, but I'm not, much like Kyle Lowry, I'm not really feeling 8,800 for DeMar as being a great situation for him. He's at 81 on DraftKings, which is a little bit better, but I'm not fully there. Now, I didn't talk about it before, but Norm Powell is at 5,500 on DraftKings, so way less appeal over on DraftKings, and I wouldn't consider him a lock for cash on DraftKings at all. But at 5,500, he can easily beat that value, but he's far from a lock. He's far from a core player, but he can be a strong cash guy. As for Yanni, he's at 10.3. I really like Yanni over on DraftKings. At small forward, we've got Mick Beasley's at 1,700. He was not overlooked, but he played and was terrible in Game 5, and then Mirza came in ahead of him. He's at 1,700. So if you think that they're going to go back to Beasley, we know he's got microwave scoring possibilities. That's the $1,700 guy I'm looking at. I'd much prefer him over, say, a Delon Wright, because if he gets 18 minutes, he can score 18 real-life points very, very easily. So that at 1,700, that's worth looking at. PJ Tucker at 31, you'd have to get him at 1,500 for me to be interested in PJ. While Tone Snell at $4,000 dues, he is, we know he has these games where he doesn't knock the threes down, but I wouldn't be using him in cash. I'll leave it there. Chrissy Middleton's at 6,900.
Giggity.
6,900 for Chrissy Middleton. He's sick. He hasn't played well. It just feels too high now. At 63 on DraftKings, I'm there for that. For Middleton, I'm more interested there if it fits what you need to do. But he's far from a must-own guy or a must-roster guy. Well, Damari Carroll, you should be pretty comfortable with my thoughts on him. At power forward, Serge Ibaka, 6,400. So, really good Game 5. No problem with going with Serge. I think that's a good play to use him there. And the Bucks power forward should be non-existent. Thon McCurr, 3,900 for Thon. He's had some decent games. He had a 20-pointer in this series. I don't like him at 3,900 that much. And 3,800 over on DraftKings. It's okay, but I'd probably look at him more as a tournament sort of guy. Greggy Munro at 65 is a no interest situation for me, but at 57 on DraftKings for Munro, fine, but he's only getting 24 a night, 24 minutes, so yeah, a lot of his appeal evaporates there. As for Jonas Valanciunas at 5,600, that is bananas. That is way too high. He's at 44 on DraftKings, and at 44 on DraftKings, I could understand that if you were just struggling to get a center into your lineup, but I wouldn't be feeling great about it. I wouldn't be looking at him as a priority ad or anything along those lines. let's go to the second game of the night, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. They are traveling to Memphis to take on the Grizzlies. The Spurs have the 3-2 advantage heading into game 6 here. Get the Spurs looking to close out the series. At point guard, Tone Parker, who's played 30 minutes the last couple of games. You got to have a look at him, but he is at $5,000, so that's that's an interesting spot. But I just don't like the salary there for Tone. That's on FanDuel. He's at 49 on DraftKings. I'm not really feeling it too much now. I do have a couple of questions coming about that last game. So before I get too deep into this Spurs-Grizzlies one, maybe I'll look at that. Calvin Roberts says, Delon Wright could win someone a GPP with the way Lowry and Joseph is playing if Casey would give him the run he deserves. Agree completely. And throw it in, Calvin, the way Damari Carroll is playing, because Delon has played better than him at the 3 as well this season. So, yeah, he absolutely could do that, and that's why I said at that price, he does have value. And Sharif Ali says, you can cram a lot of guys in if you start with McCurr in GPPs only. Absolutely, you can. His upside's just not really that high, though. That's the concern I have. But the other centers you've got out there are Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, the Undertaker, who might not even play, and Valanciunas. There aren't many other centers around there who are great options. So using McCurr is totally a fine option. If you're going in cash, though, you're probably looking at a guy more like Marc Gasol. Back to the point guards in this Spurs-Grizzlies game. Pat Mills, he went off. He went off in the last game. 24 FanDuel points at 4,200. You got to look at that and go, do I think Pat Mills can play better than game 4? And then if you look at it and say, probably not, then 4,200, where's his value coming from? That's the way that I look at Mills in that situation. Now on DraftKings at 3,700, totally fine. He get you 25 points, 23 points comfortably. He smashes it. But on FanDuel at the 42, I'm not quite in there on Millsy. Mike Conley at 8,700. Yeah, he might not get to the 5x, but he has been brilliant throughout this series. His lowest score in the series has been 35, and at 8,700, that's not a disaster. He's averaging 46 over the last 3. You feel good about getting 40 out of Conley. That is a pretty rock-solid cash play on both FanDuel and DraftKings, in my opinion. Andy Harrison's at 2,800. He's actually playing 20-odd minutes the last couple of games. I feel very nervous about putting much faith in Andy Harrison. But if you're looking for that cheaper option, maybe, but probably not great. Shooting guards, there's a lot of crap here. There's Wayne Selden, there's Troy Daniels. Neither of those guys really get me going. Dan Green's at 4,000. He's averaging 8 points over the last 3 games. 12.5 over the series, and yes, he is at $4,000, but to me, that's not a good investment of $4,000. While Manu finally had something happening in the last game, $2,900 for Manu. I do like that for a tournament. He was brutally bad through the first 4 games, and then had a great game 5 where he put up 24 points. At $2,900, 16 or 17 points for Manu. It is very far from being hard for him to do. Jim Ennis at 3,300. No problems with Jim. He's played well, I think, in his role. And if he's going to get 30 minutes, he can get close to 20 points. And at 3,300, it's fine. Vincy Carter had a decent game in the last one as well, but I'd only be looking at him as a tournament type play. But going for some of these cheaper wings is something you're going to have to do, I think. Obviously, Norm Powell is the number 1 guy there, and you can go for Yanni as a high price player. But some of these other cheaper wings, like an Ennis, like a Ginobili, like Carter, I think you're going to have to fit them in order to get players like Conley in, to get Yanni in, to get Kawhi in, these other sort of players. Well, speaking of Kawhi, let's get to him now. He's at 10,200. Yeah, I think if you're looking for reliability and you're spending up, that's the one. It's him and Conley. They're the 2 ones that I really look at and go, yeah, I feel confident about those guys. Yeah, the price is high, but we know he can get to 50. We know he can smash through 50, so I don't really have a concern with that. He's at 97 on DraftKings as well. Davis Bertans is also a small forward. He's at 1,500 and actually played 14 minutes in the last game because the Undertaker, Dwayne Dedman, is out of the rotation. And I think that he deserves to play. I think he should play, but he has struggled a little bit in this series. And I reckon we might not see Dedman again in this series, and that's going to mean Bertans gets some more minutes. So differentiation in a GPP at 1,500, 10 points, maybe. He's looked all right the last 2 games, Bertans in games 4 and 5. He's looked okay. At power forward, Dave Lee should continue to start, 3,400. No problems. I think it's actually a really good way of spending money at that power forward spot. At 4,300 on DraftKings, he's not quite he's not quite as good as what he is on FanDuel, but he's solid. While Zach Randolph is at 6,300, and Randolph did struggle in the last game, but I do think that he'll be a bounce back guy at home, and I think that he is worth a look. Now, Sharif says no love for the Spurs guards. Not really. He said Ginobili crushed. Yeah, he did. He was also dreadful for 4 consecutive games before that. So that's sort of getting into a bit of recency bias there, Sharif. He had a fantastic game 5, Manu, but he literally did not score a point in the previous 4 games. So 1 game, 4 games, which one is it? I like Ginobili. As I just said, I think at that price he's good value. But none of those Spurs guards, Green, Parker, Mills, Ginobili, Simmons, none of them stand out as being these. I've got to have these guys in. The guys you've got to have in, yeah, Conley, Powell. They're the guys where I go, shit, this is confidence. This is where I have it. But I do like Ginobili. I probably like him the most out of all those guys. But saying he crushed it 1 game when he had 4 absolute shit sandwiches is not probably. It's not the good. I'm not trying to say. It doesn't tell the entire story. Power forwards, LaMarcus Aldridge has been just shitful. 6,900 for Aldridge. He had 28 in the last game. His highest score's only been 33 through the series. I'm not really banking on him to turn it around in this matchup, so it'd be a tournament play in that time. But pretty much everyone is in tournament consideration. Jermichael's at 3,300. Jermichael Green, he had 15 in the last game. He's actually been better these last couple, but his upside is very limited. If I'm just really struggling and I need a cheap power forward, I would go for David Lee. But if I want to go another way, I would go with Green. But to me, at $100 more, with FanDuel, I would take Green every day of the week there. Jermichael's at 36 over on DraftKings, and Dave's at 43. So if you need to go a bit cheaper there, maybe you go with Green in that sort of a setting. At centre, Marc Gasol, 7,800. I think he's fine for cash. I don't think there's much tournament upside, but it's fine if that's the way you want to spend up in cash. While Powell's at 51. He's played under 20 minutes for 2 consecutive games, Powell. So I'm not feeling that great about using him. And as I said earlier, The Undertaker, Dwayne Dedmon, out of the rotation in the last game, and it looks like he'll be out. He'll be out of the game, or out of the rotation again here. Royan Patnaik with Royan HKB. Patnaik. Do you think Giannis and Kawhi will be the highest scoring DFS players of the night? Yeah, I think Kawhi will be. Yeah, if I had to pick one, I would say that Kawhi Leonard will be the highest scoring player of the night. All right, that does it for today's show. Don't forget to check out dollarshaveclub.com/LOFB to get yourself the first month for $5. Razor handle, razor cartridges, shaving butter. If you don't want to end up like a hairy bastard like me, go and grab it. You'll love it, and then you can shave yourself like a king every day with the cheap prices and huge quality at Dollar Shave Club. So dollarshaveclub.com/LOFB. Subscribe to this podcast. Give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, wherever you listen to your podcast. And check out basketballmonster.com and the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.